The stars shimmered faintly through the dense, translucent walls of the observation pod. For the alien students aboard the starship Curiosity's Edge, it was just another day of their intergalactic studies. They had visited worlds of blazing suns, planets cloaked in endless storms, and even gas giants where life floated like translucent clouds. But this time, their curriculum had taken a daring turn to Earth, a planet notoriously classified as a death world. "Why do they call it that?" one of the students asked, their 3 sets of eyes narrowing as they scanned the planet's surface on the monitor. "It doesn't look so dangerous." From above, Earth was breathtaking. A swirl of blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds. Compared to the bleak, barren worlds that often harbored life, Earth seemed alive in a way most planets never could be. Yet, the very vibrancy that made it so mesmerizing was also what earned it its infamous title. Their instructor, a seasoned traveler with hardened scales and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, leaned in. "Earth is a paradox," they began, their tone a mix of awe and warning. "It teems with life, more diverse than any of you can imagine. But it's also one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. Survival there is a constant battle, even for its native species." A low murmur rippled through the group. It was hard to believe that such beauty could harbor such danger. As part of their assignment, the students were tasked with studying Earth's ecosystems and unraveling the mystery of its deadly reputation. Excitement buzzed through the room as they prepared for their descent. The shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, the craft trembling slightly as it pierced layers of clouds. Below, sprawling forests stretched as far as their multifaceted eyes could see, with rivers slicing through the greenery like veins. The students gazed in silence, their curiosity growing. Their first stop was a temperate rainforest. As they stepped onto the soft, mossy ground, the air was thick with moisture and an orchestra of sounds chirping, rustling, and the faint hum of unseen insects. It felt peaceful at first, but then the instructor gestured toward a cluster of plants. "Be cautious," they warned. "Those leaves release toxins that can paralyze most creatures with a single touch." One student recoiled instinctively. "And yet, life thrives here." "Not just thrives," the instructor replied. "It adapts. It evolves. That's what makes this place unique and terrifying. Every organism here is locked in an endless arms race for survival." As they ventured deeper, the students encountered more surprises. A harmless-looking stream, teeming with fish, turned out to house creatures with venomous spines. The towering trees, which seemed so serene, harbored colonies of insects capable of stripping flesh in minutes. Even the air carried invisible threats, microorganisms and viruses that could infiltrate and destroy a body before it even realized it was under attack. "This planet doesn't just challenge life," the instructor said, their voice heavy with respect. "It demands resilience at every level." But it wasn't just the wildlife or the environment that fascinated and horrified the students. As they pored over historical data, they began to uncover something even more astonishing: the story of the planet's dominant species, humans. Unlike most sentient beings the students had studied, humans lacked natural weapons. They didn't have sharp claws, venomous bites, or armored hides. Compared to Earth's predators, they were weak, slow, and fragile. And yet, they had risen to dominate the planet in ways no other creature had. "How?" one student asked, bewildered. How could something so physically vulnerable survive here, let alone thrive? The instructor's gaze darkened. By becoming the most dangerous species of all. Humans, they explained, had mastered tools, fire, and later. But what truly set them apart was their relentless ingenuity. They didn't just adapt to their environment, they transformed it. They built shelters to defy storms, developed medicines to combat diseases, and forged weapons to defend themselves from predators and each other. But there was a darker side to their dominance. Humans weren't just survivors, they were conquerors. Wars, extinctions, and environmental destruction followed in their wake. To the alien students, it was as if humans had taken Earth's hostile nature and amplified it, turning their planet into a crucible of competition and conflict. The shuttle hovered over a city now, its glittering lights stretching into the horizon. From above, it looked like a marvel of order and innovation. But as the students scanned deeper, they could sense the chaos lurking beneath the surface: conflicts over resources, struggles for power, and a precarious balance with the environment that could collapse at any. Do they even realize what they've done to their world? One of the students whispered. Some do, the instructor replied. But understanding and acting are two very different things. Just as the students were beginning to grasp the complexity of Earth, an alarm blared on the shuttle. A sudden, violent storm had formed. Dark clouds swirling and lightning flashing like a warning from the planet itself. The pilot struggled to stabilize the craft as fierce winds buffeted it from all sides. Is this normal? A student shouted over the noise. For Earth, yes, the instructor said grimly. This planet has no mercy, not for its inhabitants, and certainly not for visitors. The storm grew stronger, and the screen showed the city below beginning to flood. Humans scrambled to higher ground, their faces etched with fear and determination. For a brief moment, the students glimpsed the raw reality of life on a death world. It wasn't just the environment or the creatures, it was the unrelenting, unforgiving challenge of survival itself. As the shuttle finally broke free from the storm's grasp and soared back toward space, the students sat in stunned silence. They had come to study Earth, to uncover its secrets. But what they had found was something far more profound, a world where life and death danced together in an eternal, intricate balance. And as they gazed down at the planet one last time, a question lingered in their minds. Was Earth truly a death world? Or was it a testament to life's ability to endure, to adapt, and to rise above even the harshest odds? The answer, they realized, might be as complex and untamed as the planet itself. As the shuttle drifted back into the stillness of space, the alien students remained silent, each lost in their thoughts. The images of the storm, the chaos, and the sheer resilience of Earth's inhabitants replayed in their minds. For all their advanced knowledge, they found themselves grappling with questions they couldn't easily answer. One of the younger students broke the silence. Instructor, they asked hesitantly, how did humans survive long enough to reach this point? With everything against them, how did they not give up? The instructor glanced at the group, their eyes flickering with a mixture of pride and unease. Humans don't survive because it's easy. They survive because they refuse to fail. It's a trait born out of necessity. On a planet like Earth, giving up is not an option. The instructor tapped on a console, and a holographic display materialized, showing Earth's evolutionary timeline. It began with primitive life forms struggling to take hold in oceans battered by storms and volcanoes. Over millions of years, life adapted, changing in ways that were almost incomprehensible. Every creature on this planet, the instructor explained, is shaped by the relentless pressure to adapt or die. Humans are no exception. They started as vulnerable, small groups in hostile environments, constantly on the brink of extinction. Yet, instead of succumbing, they learned to outthink their predators, to work together, and to create tools that gave them an edge. One student frowned. But if they're so capable, why does it seem like they're still in constant conflict with their planet and with each other? The instructor hesitated before responding. That's the paradox of intelligence, they said. The very traits that helped humans survive also make them dangerous to themselves and everything around them. Their creativity, their resourcefulness, their drive to conquer challenges. Those same qualities can lead to destruction when unchecked. The students absorbed this in silence, watching as the hologram shifted to show early human settlements. They saw crude shelters, fire pits, and the beginnings of agriculture. But alongside these images of progress were others depictions of tribes clashing, animals driven to extinction, and landscapes transformed beyond recognition. Earth-shaped humans, the instructor continued, but in return, humans reshaped Earth. They learned to manipulate their environment to suit their needs. But this power came at a cost. The hologram zoomed in on a modern city, its skyline dotted with towering structures. At first glance, it seemed a testament to human ingenuity. But as the students examined it more closely, they noticed the scars beneath the surface-polluted rivers, eroded soil, and sprawling slums where people struggled to survive. "They're clever," the instructor said, their voice tinged with a hint of admiration. "But they're also reckless. They push their world to its limits, often without realizing the consequences until it's too late." Another student, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "So why don't they stop? If they understand the damage they're causing, why don't they change?" The instructor sighed, their scales shifting in a way that conveyed weariness. Change is hard, especially for a species that spent so long fighting just to stay alive. They're driven by a fear of scarcity, of not having enough. That fear, embedded deep in their history, often clouds their judgment. The shuttle's observation window revealed the planet again, now a distant sphere glowing faintly against the blackness of space. It seemed almost peaceful from this vantage point, its storms and struggles hidden beneath layers of atmosphere. "But not all humans are blind to the dangers," the instructor added. "There are those who fight to preserve their world, who see beyond their immediate needs and work toward a future where balance is possible. They're the ones who give hope to the rest." The students considered this, their earlier unease now mixed with a sense of respect. For all their flaws, humans had something undeniably compelling about them, a tenacity that refused to yield, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The shuttle's onboard systems hummed softly as it prepared to return to the main starship. The students exchanged glances, sensing that their journey was far from over. They had come to study Earth, but the more they learned, the more questions they uncovered. As the group gathered around a central console to review their data, one of the students paused, staring intently at an image on the screen. It was a satellite view of a dense forest, its canopy broken by an unusual clearing. In the center of the clearing stood what appeared to be a massive weathered structure. "What's that?" they asked, pointing at the image. The instructor leaned closer, their expression unreadable. "A relic," they said. "Humans call it a ruin. It's what remains of one of their ancient civilizations." The students exchanged intrigued looks. They had studied ruins on other planets before, but Earth's ruins seemed different, still alive, in a way reclaimed by nature, yet stubbornly enduring. The instructor's tone grew more serious. If you wish to understand Earth, you must study not just its present, but its past. Every ruin tells a story not just of what humans built, but of what they lost. A new mission was forming, unspoken but understood. The students would investigate the ruin, hoping to piece together another fragment of Earth's story. What had this ancient civilization been like? How had it risen, and why had it fallen? As the shuttle docked with the larger starship, the students prepared for their next ascent to the planet's surface. Excitement buzzed through the group, but so did a lingering tension. For all its beauty, Earth remained unpredictable, a place where danger lurked in the shadows. The instructor watched them closely, their expression guarded. They had seen what Earth could do, both to its inhabitants and to those who dared to visit. As much as they admired the students' curiosity, they couldn't shake the feeling that the planet had more surprises in store, some of which might not be so easy to survive. With a final glance out the observation window, the instructor turned away. The students had their mission, but they also had a lesson to learn, one that no data or hologram could teach. Earth was not just a death world. It was a test, a crucible, where the line between survival and extinction was razor thin. And for those who dared to face it, the price of discovery was often far greater than they ever anticipated. The air inside the starship buzzed with nervous energy as the students prepared for their mission. The ruin they had seen in the forest clearing was a mystery, and mysteries were what had brought them to Earth in the first place. Every scan and analysis they performed seemed to raise more questions than answers. What had once stood in that place? Why had it been abandoned? And why did it still radiate a faint, almost imperceptible energy signature? As the shuttle descended once more toward the planet, the students watched the thick canopy of trees draw closer. The sunlight dappled the leaves, painting the forest in shifting shades of green and gold. The clearing where the ruin stood was an abrupt interruption in the dense foliage, a scar of stone and silence amidst the wild chaos of life. The shuttle touched down with a faint hiss, and the group disembarked cautiously. The forest was alive with sounds, chirps, rustles, and the occasional distant roar of an unseen creature. It was a stark reminder of where they were. Here, every step could lead to discovery or danger. The ruin loomed ahead, its massive stones weathered by time but still standing firm. Vines snaked up its walls, and moss softened its jagged edges. To the students, it looked both ancient and defiant, as though it refused to be forgotten. As they approached, the faint energy signature they had detected earlier grew stronger. Their devices buzzed softly, alerting them to something unusual emanating from within the ruin. It wasn't just residual energy. It was active, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The instructor stopped the group before they entered. "Be careful," they warned. "We don't know what this place was used for or what might still be inside." The students nodded, their excitement tempered by caution. The first step into the ruin was like crossing a threshold into another world. The air inside was cooler, heavier, as though it carried the weight of centuries. The walls were etched with strange patterns, symbols that seemed to tell a story, but were too eroded to decipher completely. One student ran a scanner over the carvings, their face lighting up with curiosity. "These markings, they're human, but they're different from anything we've seen in their modern cities." It's like they were trying to record something important. Another student, further inside, pointed toward a dark corridor that led deeper into the structure. "The energy source is coming from there," they said, their voice low. The group hesitated. The corridor was narrow, its walls pressing close, and the faint glow of their equipment barely illuminated the path ahead. But the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. One by one, they ventured deeper into the ruin, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone. As they moved further in, the pulsing energy became more distinct. It wasn't just a sound or a vibration, it was a sensation, a subtle but insistent thrum that seemed to resonate in their very bones. "What could cause this?" one student whispered, their voice tinged with both wonder and unease. The instructor didn't answer. They were focused on the path ahead, their expression grim. They had seen ruins on other planets that emitted similar energy, and those discoveries had rarely ended well. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, its surface glowing faintly with the same pulsing energy. Around the altar were more carvings, their lines sharp and deliberate, as though the hands that made them had been driven by desperation or urgency. The students gathered around the altar, their scanners whirring as they tried to analyze the energy source. But the data they received made little sense. The energy wasn't mechanical or natural. It was something else entirely, something that defied their understanding. "This doesn't make any sense," one student said, their voice trembling. "It's like this place was designed to contain something. But what? And why is it still active?" The instructor's gaze swept over the room, their unease growing. "This isn't just a ruin," they said quietly. "It's a warning." Before anyone could respond, the faint hum of the energy began to change. It grew louder, sharper, and the pulsing light on the altar intensified. The air in the chamber grew heavy, charged with a force that made it difficult to breathe. "What's happening?" one student cried, their voice barely audible over the rising noise. The instructor didn't answer. Instead, they moved quickly, ushering the students back toward the corridor. "We need to leave. Now." But before they could reach the exit, the ground beneath them trembled. The light from the altar flared, filling the chamber with a blinding brilliance. For a moment, everything was chaos, sounds, sensations, and flashes of light blending together in a disorienting storm. When the light finally subsided, the students found themselves still in the chamber, but something had changed. The energy was no longer contained to the altar. It now pulsed through the walls, the floor, the very air around them. And then they heard it. A low, resonant sound that wasn't just a noise, but a presence. It filled the chamber, vibrating in their chests and sending chills down their spines. It wasn't a voice, not in the way they understood voices, but it carried meaning nonetheless. "Who disturbs this place?" The question echoed in their minds, not spoken but felt, a direct intrusion into their thoughts. The students froze, their fear palpable. The instructor stepped forward, their stance protective. "We mean no harm," they said aloud, their voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We are here to learn." The presence seemed to consider this, its energy shifting like a tide. "You seek knowledge," it said, its tone neither welcoming nor hostile. "But knowledge comes with a price." The students glanced at one another, their earlier excitement now replaced with dread. They had come to Earth to uncover its secrets, but they hadn't expected the secrets to be alive or aware. The energy in the room grew stronger, pressing against them like an invisible force. The instructor motioned for the students to stay close, their gaze fixed on the glowing altar. "This place," the presence continued, "was built to protect what should not be known, to safeguard what must never be unleashed." The students' scanners buzzed erratically, their devices struggling to process the overwhelming data. Whatever was in this ruin, it wasn't just a relic of the past. It was something that had been hidden for a reason. The presence seemed to sense their hesitation. "You have awakened what has long slept," it said, its tone colder now. "And now, you must decide, will you leave, or will you face the truth?" The light in the chamber intensified again, casting long, flickering shadows across the walls. The students could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on them. They had come seeking answers, but the cost of those answers might be far greater than they had anticipated. The instructor turned to the group, their expression grave. "This is no longer just an academic mission," they said. "We need to think carefully about our next move." But before anyone could respond, the ruin trembled once more, and the corridor behind them began to collapse. The way out was closing, and with it, their chance to escape the ruin's secrets unscathed. They were trapped, and the presence was waiting. Would they uncover the truth, or would the ruin claim them as part of its forgotten history? The ground shook violently as the last remnants of the corridor collapsed behind them, sealing off their escape. Dust and debris filled the air, making it hard to see or breathe. The students clung to each other, their earlier excitement now replaced with raw fear. The energy in the chamber pulsed harder, as if responding to their panic, and the strange presence seemed to grow stronger, more defined. "You cannot leave," the voice resonated in their minds again, sharper this time. "The choice has been made." The instructor stood firm, though their unease was evident. They turned to the students, their voice calm despite the chaos. "Stay together. Whatever happens, don't let fear control you." One of the students pointed to the altar, their voice trembling. "The energy, look, it's changing." The glow on the altar had intensified, spreading across the floor in intricate patterns that resembled the carvings on the walls. The lines twisted and shifted as though alive, forming new shapes that none of them could decipher. Then, with a sudden burst, the energy coalesced into the center of the room, creating a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Out of the vortex, a shape began to form, neither fully solid nor entirely ethereal. It was humanoid in appearance, but radiated an aura that was distinctly alien, its features shifting like a reflection on rippling water. The presence was no longer just a voice in their minds. It now stood before them, towering and otherworldly. "You have awakened more than you understand," the figure said, its voice reverberating in the chamber. "This place was not built to contain knowledge. It was built to contain me." The students froze, their fear turning into something deeper, a primal sense of awe mixed with dread. They hadn't just stumbled upon a ruin or a forgotten relic of humanity's past. They had released something ancient, something that had been intentionally hidden and left undisturbed for centuries. The instructor's eyes narrowed, their mind racing. "Who or what are you?" The figure tilted its head, its form shimmering. "I was once a guardian, tasked with preserving balance. But humanity's hunger for power corrupted even that which was meant to protect them. I became their greatest fear, and so they locked me away, deep within the earth, hoping time would erase my memory." The students exchanged uneasy glances. The carvings on the walls suddenly made more sense, images of conflict, of something powerful being subdued and imprisoned. But if this entity was telling the truth, then humanity had not only created the ruin, but had also been responsible for the chaos that led to its creation. "What do you want?" one student asked, their voice barely above a whisper. The entity's gaze shifted to them, its glowing eyes piercing. "I want freedom." And now that the seal has been broken. I will have it." The room grew colder, the air thick with a tension that seemed almost tangible. The students' devices began to malfunction, their screens flickering and their readings turning into incomprehensible static. The energy in the chamber surged again, and the glowing patterns on the floor began to spread outward, creeping toward the walls and ceiling. The instructor stepped forward, their voice steady despite the rising panic. "If humanity imprisoned you, there must have been a reason. What happens if you're released?" The entity's form flickered, its voice growing darker. "You speak as though they had the right to decide my fate. They feared what they could not control, and so they bound me here. Now, their descendants will reap what was sown." The students gasped, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The ruin wasn't just a prison, it was a tomb, and the energy that powered it had come at a terrible cost. Before they could process what that meant, the entity turned its gaze toward the altar. The vortex of light intensified, and the chamber trembled once more. Cracks began to spiderweb across the walls, releasing bursts of energy that illuminated the carvings in an eerie glow. "We have to stop it," one of the students shouted, their voice breaking. "Stop it? How?" another replied, their panic rising. "We don't even understand what it is." The instructor turned to the group, their expression resolute. "We don't need to understand it. We just need to contain it before it's too late." They pulled out a small device, a containment field generator designed for emergencies. It was experimental, untested, and unlikely to hold something of this magnitude. But it was their only option. The instructor activated the generator, and a dome of shimmering energy began to form around the altar. The entity turned its gaze to the instructor, its expression unreadable. "You think you can stop me with that?" it asked, its voice carrying a note of contempt. The instructor didn't answer, focusing instead on stabilizing the field. The students scrambled to assist, adjusting the device's parameters and rerouting its power to strengthen the containment. But the entity was relentless. It raised one hand and a surge of energy slammed into the dome, causing it to flicker and waver. The students cried out, their devices sparking and failing under the strain. "You cannot contain me," the entity said, its voice reverberating with finality. "Not with your machines, not with your fear." The cracks in the chamber walls widened, and the swirling energy began to spiral out of control. It was clear that the containment field wouldn't hold for long. The stakes had never been higher, and the group was running out of time. But just as despair began to take hold, one student noticed something, a faint pattern hidden within the carvings, a sequence that seemed to mirror the energy's movements. "Wait!" they shouted. "The walls, they're part of the seal. If we can realign the patterns, we might be able to reactivate it." The instructor's eyes widened. "Do it. Quickly." The students split into groups, racing against time to decode the carvings and manipulate the energy patterns. The entity watched them, its form flickering with what seemed like amusement or perhaps curiosity. "You think you can undo what was done so long ago?" it said, its voice quieter now, almost reflective. "You don't even understand the forces you're playing with." The students ignored the taunt, their focus unwavering. As the patterns on the walls began to shift, the energy in the chamber seemed to react, its wild surges growing more rhythmic. But just as they were making progress, the entity made its move. It unleashed a burst of energy that shattered part of the containment field, sending the students sprawling. The instructor shielded them, their voice firm. "Keep going. Don't stop." The stakes had never been higher. The ruin was collapsing around them, the energy threatening to consume everything in its path. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, the students pressed on, driven by a singular determination. And then, just as the patterns began to align, the chamber was engulfed in a blinding light, leaving them suspended in a moment of pure uncertainty. The light was overwhelming, swallowing everything in the chamber. The students shielded their eyes, their hearts racing, as the patterns on the walls pulsed in unison with the energy from the altar. It felt as though the ruin itself was alive, reacting to their desperate efforts to reseal the entity. When the brilliance finally faded, the chamber fell into an eerie stillness. The students blinked, trying to make sense of what had happened. The swirling vortex at the center of the room was gone, and the entity's towering form had dissipated. For a brief moment, it seemed as though they had succeeded. The instructors scanned the room, their voice calm but cautious. "Is everyone okay? Check your readings. Did the seal reactivate?" The students fumbled with their equipment, relief beginning to replace their fear. The energy in the room had stabilized, and the cracks in the walls seemed to have repaired themselves. The ruin no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it was quiet, almost serene. But as the group began to regroup, a low, resonant hum filled the chamber. It wasn't the chaotic energy they had experienced before. This was deeper, more deliberate. The floor beneath them vibrated faintly, and the altar began to glow once more, though this time with a subtler, more focused light. "What's happening now?" one student whispered, their voice trembling. The instructor's expression darkened. "Something's changed." The seal wasn't just to imprison the entity, it was connected to the planet itself. Before anyone could respond, the glowing patterns on the floor shifted again, this time forming a new configuration. The carvings on the walls lit up, revealing previously hidden symbols. These weren't warnings, they were messages. One of the students gasped as they deciphered part of the script. "It's not just a prison. This place, it's a key." The others stared at them in disbelief. "A key? To what?" The student hesitated, their voice shaky. "It says, unlocking the seal doesn't just release the entity. It activates something buried deep within Earth, a failsafe." The instructor's eyes widened as the full weight of the discovery hit them. The ruin wasn't merely a containment chamber for the entity, it was part of a much larger system. The humans who had built it hadn't just tried to hide their mistakes. They had created a contingency, one that would ensure their world could never fall into the same hands again. The hum grew louder, and the floor began to tremble. The patterns shifted once more, converging on the altar. A beam of light shot upward, piercing the chamber ceiling and disappearing into the sky. The students rushed to their equipment, their faces pale as they read the data. "It's sending a signal," one of them said, their voice barely above a whisper. "Not just to the ruin, to something outside the planet." The realization hit them like a tidal wave. Earth wasn't just a death world because of its harsh conditions and relentless ecosystems. It was a death world by design, a place fortified and armed to the teeth, with defenses that no invader could withstand. And now, those defenses were awakening. The entity's voice echoed faintly, as though from a great distance. "You have chosen wisely, but you have also unleashed what was never meant to rise again." The group stared at the altar, their relief giving way to a new kind of dread. They had contained the entity, but in doing so, they had triggered something far greater, something that had been waiting, dormant for centuries. Outside, the sky began to darken as clouds swirled unnaturally, converging around the beam of light. The forest, so vibrant and alive before, fell silent as though the planet itself was holding its breath. The instructor turned to the students, their voice steady but urgent. "We need to leave. Whatever's happening here is beyond anything we can handle." The group hurried back toward the entrance, now miraculously clear of debris. As they emerged into the open air, they saw the beam of light stretch higher, splitting the sky. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath them seemed to pulse with the same rhythm they had felt in the chamber. One student looked back at the ruin, their face pale. Do you think it's calling something here?" The instructor didn't answer immediately. Instead, they gazed at the sky, their expression unreadable. "It's possible. Or maybe it's a warning to stay away." As they boarded their shuttle, the group fell into a tense silence. The forest around them remained unnaturally still, the usual sounds of Earth's wildlife conspicuously absent. It felt as though the planet itself was waiting, watching to see what would happen next. As the shuttle lifted off, the students peered out of the windows, their eyes fixed on the ruin below. The beam of light was still visible, a stark reminder of what they had unleashed. But just as they began to leave Earth's atmosphere, one of the students gasped. On the scanners, faint signals were appearing, hundreds of them, scattered across the planet. Each one matched the energy signature of the ruin. "It's not just one," the student said, their voice shaking. "There are more dozens, maybe hundreds, all waking up." The shuttle went silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was a fortress, a network of ancient mechanisms and mysteries that had been dormant for millennia. And now they were alive again. As the group stared at the planet below, the instructor's voice broke the silence, heavy with both awe and trepidation. Earth was never just a death world. It was a warning. And now that warning is loud and clear. And somewhere, deep within the planet, something stirred, responding to the signal with an anticipation that had been centuries in the making. The story of Earth was far from over, and whatever came next would reshape everything they thought they knew. The shuttle's hum filled the silence as the group drifted further from Earth, each person consumed by their own thoughts. The planet, now an intricate tapestry of mysteries and danger, lay behind them like an unsolvable puzzle. The glowing beam piercing the atmosphere was no longer visible, but its presence lingered in their minds, impossible to ignore. One of the students broke the silence, their voice small but laden with worry. "Do we tell anyone about this? About what we've seen? What we've done?" The instructor took a long breath, their gaze fixed on the window. "We'll have to, but we must tread carefully. Not everyone will understand, and some might see Earth's awakening as an opportunity, something to exploit." Another student shook their head, fear evident in their expression. "But what if we've triggered something that can't be stopped? What if that signal? What if it's calling something hostile? We might have doomed humanity without even realizing it." The words hung heavy in the air. It was a possibility none of them wanted to acknowledge but couldn't deny. The ruin's purpose had been clear: to seal away what humanity had once feared, and to warn others against meddling. Yet their curiosity had undone centuries of caution. The shuttle docked at their orbiting ship, and the team disembarked in a haze of unease. As they moved through the halls toward their debriefing room, their steps felt heavier, the weight of their discovery growing with each moment. No one spoke as the doors closed behind them, sealing them in an atmosphere of raw tension. The instructor broke the silence first. "We need to compile every bit of data we gathered, no matter how small or incomplete. Someone out there might have answers or at least theories to help us make sense of what's happening. The students nodded, springing into action. Screens lit up. Holographic displays projected intricate maps of the ruin, energy readings, and fragments of translated carvings. The room buzzed with activity as they pieced together what they had witnessed, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. Hours turned into days as they worked tirelessly, poring over every detail. Patterns began to emerge, connecting the ruin's energy signatures to specific geological features on Earth. Each site seemed to correspond to a natural anomaly, places long considered enigmatic or unexplained by science. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. The ruins weren't isolated. They were part of a vast, interconnected network designed to protect something or to protect a universe from Earth itself. One student leaned back in their chair, rubbing their temples. It's almost like Earth is a weapon, a last resort. But for what? Who or what were they so afraid of? The question lingered, unanswered. The carvings had mentioned fear, corruption, and power, but the details were fragmented, lost to time. What was clear, however, was that the signal the ruin had sent was not random. It had a purpose, though whether it was a call for help or a warning to stay away remained uncertain. Their efforts were interrupted by an incoming transmission. The voice on the other end was calm but firm, identifying itself as a representative from the Galactic Preservation Council. The instructor exchanged a wary glance with the students before accepting the call. "We've been monitoring your expedition," the representative began, "and it seems you've uncovered something of significant interest, not just to us, but to many others as well." The instructor's jaw tightened. "We didn't mean to activate the ruin. It was an accident." "Perhaps," the voice replied, "but the consequences are real. The signal has reached far beyond Earth's atmosphere. It's been detected across multiple systems, and not all recipients will interpret it as a mere curiosity." The room fell silent, the implications settling in. The Galactic Preservation Council was known for its dedication to protecting planets and civilizations, but it was also a bureaucratic giant, slow-moving and cautious. If they were already aware of the signal, others undoubtedly were two others who might not share the same restraint. The representative continued, their tone measured. "We're dispatching a team to assess the situation. In the meantime, I suggest you remain on high alert. Earth has always been a subject of fascination and caution for the galactic community. What you've awakened will only amplify that interest." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the group to process the warning. The instructor turned to the team, their expression grim. "We need to prepare for the possibility that others will come to investigate. And not all of them will have good intentions." Their fears were confirmed sooner than expected. Reports began to flood in of unidentified ships appearing near Earth's orbit, their origins and motives unclear. Some were research vessels, drawn by the signal's allure, while others bore the markings of opportunistic factions known for exploiting vulnerable planets. The students watched the unfolding events with a mix of awe and dread. What had started as an academic expedition had spiraled into a galactic incident, with Earth at its center. The planet, once overlooked and dismissed as a chaotic, hostile world, was now the focus of intense scrutiny. But as tensions mounted, an unexpected development occurred. The signal that had initially drawn so much attention began to fade, its strength diminishing with each passing hour. The beam of light that had pierced Earth's atmosphere dissipated, leaving the planet shrouded in its usual veil of clouds and storms. The students were baffled. Why would it stop? Did the ruins deactivate themselves? The instructor's gaze was distant, their voice thoughtful. Maybe the system recognized the threat was no longer immediate. Or maybe it's waiting for the next move. The sudden quiet didn't bring relief. It brought more questions. What had the signal accomplished? Had it truly awakened Earth's defenses? Or was it merely a test, a precursor to something greater? As the team returned to their respective roles, the weight of the experience stayed with them. They had unlocked a secret, older than recorded history, one that hinted at humanity's place in a much larger cosmic puzzle. The ruins, the entity, the signal, all were pieces of a story that had yet to be fully told. Months passed, and the galaxy's attention shifted elsewhere, drawn by new discoveries and conflicts. Earth remained on the fringes, its mysteries untouched for the time being. The ruins, though quiet, were not forgotten, their purpose etched into the memories of those who had witnessed their power. The students and their instructor parted ways, each carrying the burden of what they had learned. Some pursued careers dedicated to understanding ancient civilizations, hoping to uncover more about Earth's enigmatic past. Others chose to step away, the weight of the experience too much to bear. The instructor, however, stayed close to the planet, their curiosity unshaken. They knew that Earth's story was far from over, that its secrets would one day resurface. And when they did, the galaxy would once again be reminded of why this seemingly unremarkable world was known as a Deathworld. As the years passed, the ruins became the stuff of legend, their existence debated and dismissed by those who hadn't seen them firsthand. But for those who had been there, who had felt the raw power of the entity and the intricate design of the planet's defenses, there was no doubt. Earth was more than a home. It was a legacy, a warning, and perhaps even a promise. And somewhere deep within the planet, in chambers untouched by time, the ancient systems lay dormant, waiting patiently for the day they would be needed again.